What's up, everybody? Meet my very first truck, a 1991 Chevrolet S10. Now, this particular truck is fitted with the 4-cylinder motor, not the larger 6-cylinder, and it is just a single cab with a short bed. But when I was in high school and 16 years old, this is all I really needed. Now, overall, this is exactly how I got the truck a few years back, including these sweet wheels and the two-tone paint job. Now, just like any other 16-year-old kid, when I first got the truck, the first thing I wanted to do was bring it home, get it all cleaned up, and get it on the road just like I wanted it. Now, the more I would scrub this paint and the more I thought I was getting it clean, I was actually just taking more and more paint off and my rag was turning blue. However, we were able to get a decent coat of wax on it, and it doesn't do that as much anymore. So what we're looking at here under the hood of the S10 is the inline 4 2.5 liter GM sourced motor. Now, when this thing was new, it did create around 110 horsepower, and after all these years, it doesn't quite create that same power anymore. However, it does make just enough power to get out of its own way and get down the road. One of the most interesting features of this truck is quite possibly that air dam. Here, even on 1991 S10, the air dam was stock. Now, moving here into the interior of the S10, it is pretty basic. You do just have a bench seat, basic radio controls, but it is everything you need in a truck. One of the neatest features about this truck is this shelf that runs basically half the width of the entire truck that you can throw your gloves on, your sunglasses on, or whatever that keeps them more or less out of sight, but still easily within arm's reach. Now, one thing that's not so cool about this truck is it doesn't have any cup holders. So we were able to get this little bucket here that you could fit a drink into, but from the factory, it doesn't have any cup holders to speak of. However, just like any other 16-year-old kid, the more I was with this truck, the more I grew to love it, and it did come up with a nickname. Now, of course, it wasn't just a normal nickname knowing me, so it affectionately became Jarvis. One thing I've always loved about these older trucks is the suspension is okay at best, but actually the seats are so soft that you'll just be going down the road, and if you hit a bumpy patch, you'll just be bouncing up and down on your seat, and your suspension actually doesn't really do much. So that's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. So taking a look here at the radio and the gauge cluster, I think it's actually pretty neat. Now, the only thing here in the center of the truck is just the radio, and it is pretty basic, but overall it still does work, including that really sweet cassette player. Now, all of your heating and air conditioning controls are right here near the driver, so apparently Chevrolet didn't really care how your passenger felt in here as long as the driver was happy. And like I said, these controls don't exactly work. It is still blowing pretty warm air here on my legs, but overall it's not too bad. But I think the really interesting part here is in the gauge cluster. Now, all of this is pretty futuristically designed here for what is now a pretty old truck. You have your speedometer and your fuel tank there, front and center, but no tachometer, which is pretty interesting. I've never driven a manual S10, but I wonder if the tachometer is there, but it does have your other basic displays like your temperatures and your voltmeter there. One thing I love about these older trucks is the fact that you can definitely tell that you're not in a new vehicle when you're behind the wheel. One thing that was lost here as we got more and more modern trucks is the fact that you could get all of your interior to match the exterior of the truck. So here, with the exterior of the truck being blue and white, all of your interior is blue. So you have the carpeting, the seats and other upholstery, and your dash all blue. I think that's a really neat feature. Now, GM's not the only one to do this. I know Ford definitely did it back in the day as well, but you can definitely tell this is an older truck. Now, this is the first generation of the S10. They then went to the second generation before switching the nameplate over to Colorado, and now we're on the second generation of the Colorado. So this truck is now 4 generations old, and again around 26 years old, but overall it is holding up just fine. There are no major rattles, and really the only thing wrong with it is the fact that it won't stop blowing hot air on the legs. But overall it is doing just fine. It steers just fine, it stops just fine, and everything is really not going to get a whole lot better for a small truck of this age. Now, obviously, if it was 4-wheel drive, it would give a little bit more confidence there in poor weather. I did have this truck for over a year, and I was able to drive it in some pretty heavy rain and some pretty heavy snow and everything else. Now, the windshield wipers here are not the best, but overall, the truck does just fine. It does get a little bit slippery with that lack of weight there in the rear end when it gets a little icy or something like that. But overall, if you drive sensibly, you'll be just fine here in this old S10. Now, another thing I really like here about these trucks is they're just really honest and straightforward. Like I said, pretty much everything works other than the air conditioning, and you know, there's really nothing wrong with the truck even after all these years. Now, like I said, it's not the fastest thing. We'll go full throttle here for a second. Makes a hum similar to what your vacuum cleaner makes, but not really a whole lot of speed gets picked up. But overall, just for, you know, going down the road here, it does just fine. Now, my brother doesn't use this as necessarily a work truck. He does haul a couple bags of feed on the back, and that's probably all you really want to haul with this. We've never towed with this truck, but I wouldn't expect it to do overly well with that. But it is what it is. You know, at the end of the day, it's a 4-cylinder, small truck, and if you just have a little bit of stuff to throw in the bed, it'll do just fine. Now, this truck basically filled all my needs until I started doing more and more interstate driving. The brakes on this do lock up fairly easily, and like we covered before, it never really goes the speed you think it does, and you can never really keep up with traffic. But overall, just as an around town truck, just to run to the store, pick up some stuff, and head back home, it really worked out just fine, and it was a great first truck. Now, obviously, I did progress into Tacomas and Jeeps and everything else after this, but this really got me started and got my foot in the door here with trucks, and this is really my first experience with a truck of my own. So I hope you all really enjoyed this video. If you are looking into one of these older S10s, I really have loved mine and had really good luck with mine, and like I said, it does belong to my brother now, and he's been doing just fine with it as well. So thank you all very much for watching. Have a fantastic week, everybody. We'll catch you next time. Do one last acceleration here. That's foot to the floor, 30 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour.